What's up, everybody? Welcome to the AllSooners Podcast. It is Thursday. I said Thursday, November 9th. We had to miss a day yesterday. Our MVP was down, but he's back today. This is episode 220. Ryan was down yesterday, but he's back, and he's full strength. He looks full strength. He sounds full strength, so I'm buying he's full strength. Ryan joins us for more. I'm John Hoover in Tulsa. Randall coming in on the third segment. We're going to talk Bedlam, West Virginia. We're going to talk the latest in the world of recruiting. We're going to talk baseball, softball, basketball. We're going to start off, Brian. How you feeling today?
A lot better. I think I told you yesterday that I got done with radio, which is a really weird situation of when you work the 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. slot, you almost have to make the decision if you're going to call in sick the day before. And yes. I wasn't sure that I was totally sick or just feeling bad or under the weather. I was meh pretty much. So I think I slept from 11 a.m. to 5:30 yesterday once I got back in, and I feel like a whole new human. So up and at 'em, and look, that's just what you have to be this time of year, because for the next 3 weeks, it's the beautiful collision of football meets basketball, and then when you get signing day, it's football meets basketball meets softball and baseball. Is what we get, everything, the whole mixer.
Yep. It's yesterday, the last couple of days have been a challenge to get it all in, but we're doing the best we can over at AllSooners.com. I encourage you guys to check it out. You sent out a press release yesterday. We got everything in on the softball girls. So when we get done with the podcast, you guys get done listening to us on the podcast. Go read that. Go read up on your new softball team. We'll talk about them in the next segment. I said we were going to recap OSU really briefly. Really briefly, we're going to recap OSU. And here's where I want to go with this. Danny Stutzman practiced on Monday. We don't know what his situation was beyond that, but Brent Venables said he's going to do everything in his power to play against West Virginia this week, 6 p.m. That's a night game. Y'all better get your no-dos and your whatever extra coffee or whatever you take, Red Bull. It's going to be a Red Bull.
The no-dos? The what?
You've never heard of a no-dose?
No.
Oh, yeah. Over-the-counter stay up all night studying medicine that I used to take in college, as well as something called Vivarin. You remember that? You ever heard of Vivarin?
No. I have not.
Revive with Vivarin.
This sounds like when I watch World War II documentaries, and they're just like, so actually the Germans were doing meth. Yes. And that is how the Blitzkrieg happened, is because they just gave them meth. Like that.
How do you think I got through college? How do you think I got through college working a full-time job 75 hours a week at a small-town newspaper? Revive with Vibrant. And I would wash it down with a Jolt Cola. You ever heard of Jolt Cola?
No, I think that when you pass, we need to dedicate your body to science, because I think it's probably just the acid of everything. You probably just have metal pipes now where your arteries used to be and things like that.
Oh, my God. How did we devolve into my college staying up all night habits?
Because I
didn't sleep very much. I'll say this. I think I think it's expired, the statute of limitations. We used to climb over the fence at the Elks Club, the Elks Lodge in Ada, and basically swim all night. We'd go pick up some pretty girls and go swimming all night. And then I worked at a morning newspaper, which it was an afternoon newspaper. So our deadline was 11 in the morning. So I would be at work at 6 a.m., worked from 6 to 11, putting out the paper after staying up all night swimming with pretty girls at the Elks Lodge.
I'm familiar.
I don't know how I made it this far in life, Ryan. I don't know how.
It's I'm familiar with the back part of that shift, but I work morning radio now, so I'm familiar with that. Although Scout the dog and I do not have as fun a nightlife as you do. For us, it's by about 7:30, I'm like, you want to toss the Thunder game on? Okay, sick. Let's lay down. And then she's like, can we go to bed? I'm like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's me and Mrs. Hoover last night. We watched a movie, and then it was like, okay, you want to watch this Thunder game? Might as well watch the Thunder game. So we did. Hey, let's talk Bedlam just to recap and wrap that thing up and throw it in the trash one last time. Something I'm going to take away from that game. There's a lot that happened, obviously, but one of the big takeaways for me is I think you got your linebacker situation solved with Kip Lewis instead of Jaron Kanek Jaron Kanek is an unbelievable athlete. He's got an unbelievable attitude. He's a tremendous teammate. Everybody loves him. He's still learning the nuances of playing linebacker, simply put. He'll learn, he'll get better, he'll grow, he'll be a star. I really think that. He's fantastic. But he's still learning those how to, dip your shoulder and how to take on a block and how to read where the backside block is coming from and stuff like that. Just the little pieces that get him out of position, force him to miss so many tackles. But I think they got that solved with Kip Lewis coming in, having 15 tackles the other night, Ryan.
Yeah, you have to feel really good about Kip, a guy too that still can put on 5 to 10 pounds this offseason when you think about if they do it in a way where he's not losing some explosiveness and he's just going to be an even more sure-handed tackler. You think about too the possibilities. This is like way down the road, but does missing a couple of games help Danny Stutzman decide maybe to come back to Norman and have another year of tape and improvement? We saw the leap that he made from year 1 to year 2. Well, then suddenly, if you're talking about next year having 4 guys that played 2 spots in Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie, Jaron Kanek, Danny Stutzman, that sounds like a fantastic rotation to help bridge the gap for what will be a pretty young defensive line in year 1 in the SEC. So that's a recruitment job with Danny Stutzman. That's a recruitment job to get him to come back, a recruitment job to keep all those guys from transferring because you'll have to rotate those snaps. But shoot, Hoove, even if this week, if Danny Stutzman's able to get back into the field, which it sounds like he's progressing that way. Eddie and I talked to Steve Stutzman this morning, and Steve sounded it sounded like Danny was going to give it a go on Saturday. And so even if Danny can't go 100% of the snaps or whatever, remember back to that West Virginia game last year where it just felt like all the linebackers, Agwebu, Deshaun White, and Stutzman were just dead tired and run on empty by the fourth quarter. Yep. Now you've got 4 guys to rotate for 2 spots. That should keep those guys healthier and help work Stutzman back slowly into that rotation and not feel awful about a drop-off because Kip Lewis was exceptional and Kobe McKenzie had a little stuff dropping into coverage that still looked like a guy that needs a little bit more work on that, but he's a heavy hitter as well, and you're not as worried about that kind of threat playing West Virginia as you would have been for like a Kansas or a UCF.
As long as we're talking about Stutzman, let's ask the question, what are the Butkus people thinking? What? You got 12 semifinalists and Danny Stutzman's not one of them? That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I was just surprised because like the central role he played in that Texas game, a game that everybody was watching. Mm-hmm. It was impossible not to see the Danny Stutzman's. So it's not like he's gone under the radar by any means. His numbers, his play, and
National Player of the Week against SMU.
Yeah, and like the off the field stuff too. I find it really hard to believe that just because he was hurt for a game and a half, like if anything, right. Oklahoma's defense, while it did a pretty good job against Oklahoma State, they didn't get that final stop against Kansas. They didn't get that final stop against the Cowboys. If anything, like doesn't that show you just how important Stutzman was to that group?
Yeah. So this weekend is the first of 2 All-American Selection Committee get-togethers with the Football Writers Association of America, and I'm one of the 2 Big 12 guys, voters, I should say, selection committee members, who would basically our job is to recommend people from our conference, the conference that we cover, right? I think we can say Cooper Beebe's going to land on that list. I think we can say Danny Stutzman's going to land on that list too. I'm going to recommend Danny Stutzman for All-American. And one of the reasons is I looked at I always start by looking at my nomination process, and I look and see, okay, what are the names that are out there? I want to see the names. See if everybody's on the same page as me. And so I'll start with the mid-season All-America teams. There's like 15 mid-season All-America teams out there right now. And they're all reputable. They're all good, done by writers who know what they're doing, know what they're talking about, know what they're looking at. So I trust them. But there's just so many. And so I took 10. I took 10 mid-season All-American teams. Danny Stutzman was first team mid-season All-American on 7 of those 10 teams. Cooper Beebe, I think, was 8 or 9. I'm going to have to go back and look. But you see what I'm saying? I mean, it's easy to spot the first teamers. It's easy to spot the obvious ones. And Danny Stutzman is an obvious one. He's got more tackles for loss right now than anybody else among the 12 Butkus semifinalists. What else do you need to know? Crazy.
Especially playing in a defense that everyone knows this isn't a new thing.
Yep.
Brent Venables, linebacker guru. The linebackers are essential to everything a Brent Venables defense wants to do, and he's been the heart and soul of that. And so, Brent Venables, I thought, I'm glad it was asked of Brent Venables on Tuesday what he thought about that. I thought that he gave kind of basically what you would expect, that he's not super worried about that, all that stuff. And again, on radio, we talked to Danny's dad, and he said that Danny's dad was actually the one that when he called him, he broke it to him. And basically, Danny is, there was a human moment of kind of being a little bummed, but he's focused on the team stuff and all that.
Yeah.
And so it'll all be really, really interesting. I am now suddenly fascinated with what this kind of midseason injury does for should Stutzman come back or not, because the way that his season was going, I think it would have been full speed ahead of, like, I don't know what else you're going to prove, Danny, unless you want to come back and win, which go for it. Like, it seems like he really enjoys being at Oklahoma and playing under Brent Venables. Totally get that angle of it, but from like the purely business NFL side, I didn't know what else. But if you can come back and do that for a whole season in the SEC, everyone's going to look at that tape a little bit different.
And here's the thing. You look at somebody like Kenneth Murray. These guys are steeped in the Oklahoma linebacker tradition, right? The big ones, the first rounders, the pros, the guys that are going to play a long time. Rocky Kalmus came back this year, and I think he's met Rocky before, but, Teddy Lehman's always around the program. Boz has been back like 15 times this year, cutting videos and standing up, and he even cut his hair, remember, with the Bedlam mohawk to honor Stutzman, is what he told me in the men's room the other day in Stillwater. So I think Danny is like, this has been something that's on his list. This is one of those things, because you're steeped in the program. You're steeped in who started the Butkus. It was Boz. And then they win it in, was it 0203? 0102? Yeah, 0102, I think. They run together, obviously. Or was it 0103? Anyway, Teddy and Rocky won it. If not back-to-back years, then separated by 1, 2, and 3 years. Anyway, where I'm going with this is this really, really means a lot to him. So I could see, number one, he's bummed. Number two, maybe he's motivated to, like you said, come back. We'll see what the NFL people say. Because the NFL people told Kenneth Murray, yeah, don't worry about the Butkus. You need to go. You need to be a first-round pick, and he was, and he's been very good since. Let's talk about another position coming out of the Bedlam series. What do you got? What do you got?
Here's part of Brent's answer about Danny Stutzman. And Brent Venables has been around a bunch of those really great Oklahoma linebackers and a bunch of great linebackers in general. Quote, he's a fantastic linebacker, has a chance to be as good as we've ever had.
That's a worm on a line right there. Come and get it.
Yeah, Brent Venables doesn't just toss that out about anybody. Right. Like Brent Venables, does he do the build up his roster, build confidence through the media? Sure. He does not, at the linebacker spot, throw out the phrase, has a chance to be as good as we've ever had.
Yep.
If he does not believe that that's a possibility.
Right. That's a good point, Ryan. Let's move on to another position of need coming out of the Bedlam game. Brent said yesterday or Tuesday at his press conference, he just offered it up. He was talking. He was just talking, right? He was answering some question, and he just decided to say, I'm not going to go into it right now, but we have an area on the team we need to get better at. To which my immediately was like, slam on the brakes. Wait, go back. I want to look at that again. Who are we talking about? What position are we talking about? We don't know exactly, but I think we can infer it's either tight end, most likely tight end, or it's kicker. But he came out later and said how great Zach Schmidt was at making extra points. He's 45 of 45 and 100 of 100 in his career, by the way. So you guys that are on the kicker, Brent wants you to back off because he's making all his PATs. We'll get into that in a second, but because that wasn't the only kicker he mentioned out of the blue on Tuesday. But what are your thoughts on, let's just presume, we're not breaking any news here, we're not reporting anything, but we're going to presume he was talking about the tight end position because, bless his heart, Austin Stogner just struggled big time against Oklahoma State.
Yeah, it actually, in the moment, Hoove, it wasn't the first position group I went to mentally. And the first position group I went to mentally was was he talking about maybe some of the backup corners just because they're so young, because they're having to throw a ton of true freshmen out there.
Yeah.
Because once Gentry went down and Kenai Walker had a pretty up and down game in Lawrence and all that stuff. But then I remembered the reason I didn't initially go to the tight end is because when I think about Oklahoma football this year, I don't even consider the tight end. Like, I understand that they're out there, but this is going to sound harsh, I don't mean it to. It's been a wasted roster spot on the field for a majority of this season. There's not been any kind of consistency with like, hey, Stockton only has 3 catches a game, but they're big third down spots or stuff like that. And Stogner, if you go back and watch this Bedlam game, he spent more time as a blocker looking behind him with his hands on his hips because he was getting beat and plays were getting blown up. And there was no other answer. Blake Smith has just been what we kind of expected, which was he was a non-factor at Texas A&M. He's really been a non-factor at Oklahoma. Caden Helms has been hurt. Jason Llewellyn was subtweeting during the game. He quote tweeted an OU Barstool tweet. He didn't travel.
Add the context there, Ryan. Give us the context of what Llewellyn said.
It
looks like, from the outside looking in, it looks like Llewellyn might be planning to hit the transfer portal.
Yeah, the OU Barstool account tweeted something along the lines of just how do there's not a tight end that is making an impact or something like, or why do you keep rolling him out there? And Llewellyn just quote tweeted that with a period. It was later taken down, but that happened during the game as a guy that didn't travel.
Right.
Outside of hitting on Devon Mitchell in the recruiting game, I'm not sure what Joe John Finley has done this year, truthfully.
Right.
They had the opportunity to go after some guys that had some regional ties. The North Texas tight end was in the portal, who's pretty athletic. Instead, they settled for Stogner, which that would make sense, right? Some familiarity. But like the second guy you got and get can't be a Blake Smith who has really made no impact in college football, because Stogner, like people that were at Oklahoma should have known, he was not the same guy physically after his really, really scary situation at the end of 2020. And South Carolina, like there were quotes out of South Carolina that they thought they got more athletic and all around better by not having Austin Stogner in their tight end room. So that's been a huge issue. And I think compounded on that is that not only has that not been a position that has affected anything, Jeff Lebby insists on rolling a tight end out there regardless. Like, just go 4 wide or put an extra running back out there. Why are you persisting with knowing that you're basically sacrificing a guy that's not helping?
He's not a threat in the receiving game. And so when you put him out there and he can't block, he becomes a liability. You're playing 10 on 11. And we're bagging on his blocking. He's trying his best. He's trying his best. Something's wrong. He's not mobile right now. People are beating him with one little step. And what you're seeing is Drake Stoops getting taken down for a 6-yard loss on third down, that forces a 51-yard field goal. Instead, because the DB went under Stogner's block and Stogner's pushing him into the ball carrier. That happened 3 times where he was behind the guy and, there goes my guy, waylaying the ball carrier again. And that will get you beat. And it did. It got you beat against Oklahoma State. So what's the answer, Ryan? 4 wides, you think?
Yeah, or the fact that you haven't been able to settle on a running back and they are contingent on doing a bunch of weird crap with them. So just throw Sawchuk and Tawi Walker out there, or put Barnes and Sawchuk out there.
Yep, I like it.
I thought that all 3 of Sawchuk, Tawi Walker, and Javonte Barnes were pretty good in the few moments they were called upon, kind of in pass pro against Oklahoma State, which hasn't been a strength of that group all year long. Before Texas, I thought that the running backs had been pretty meh in pass protection, and since then I think they've been really good. So you finally have gotten some momentum rolling in the running game. Feels like you've gotten Sawchuk healthy and online a bit. Tawi Walker feels like he's going to get a little bit healthier. I don't know if he'll be 100%, but Brent Venables also said he was a guy that practiced on Monday. It sounds like he's practiced pretty consistently this week as well. And so you've got that option. If you don't necessarily want to go 4 wide or whatever, I think that would be more effective. But it kind of goes back to 2. You got Jaden Gibson, who's 6'5", Nick Anderson, that's 6'4". You can put 2 wide receivers on the field who are really big bodies, who give you some of the matchup issues that a tight end, kind of traditionally poses to a defense without them actually being tight ends. And those guys can actually go out and catch the football because they've shown us that they've done that this year.
Yeah. Stogner had a couple of good games early in the season. in terms of blocking. I'm looking at his run blocking numbers. He was up in the 70s and the 60s. We're talking Pro Football Focus grades here. Pass blocking, similarly, 70s and 60s early in the season. But everything has kind of declined. You look at his overall grade, he's dipped. It's kind of remarkable. He's dipped a little bit every week. And I'll give it to you from week 1 to week 10, 65, 57, 56, 52, 51, 51.3. So down a tenth of a point. 49.7, 49.3, 48.3. So he's having his worst game of the year every week. So it's what Brent Venables said. I mean, we're sitting here going back and forth on it, but it's something that Brent brought up on his own, unsolicited, unasked in the press conference. We've got a position that's struggling right now. We got to do something about it. So just want you all to know that that's where we stand on it. His grades were pretty solid earlier in his career too, and that's the crazy thing. He graded out offensively at an 85.2 in 2020. On pass plays, he was 87.3. Pass plays grade this year 44. So,
and I think that part of that also should fall back on Jeff Lebby of
yes, not knowing how to use them.
Yeah, if one of the big things about coaching is don't ask guys to do things they're not good at. It sounds super simple, but as our friend Kelly Gregg, if he said it once, he said it a billion times. Football's a simple game made complicated by coaches. If you know you're struggling with, say, an Austin Stogner having a bad game, having a bad stretch of games blocking, why are you running a play that's contingent on him sealing off the inside? Like that,
Yep.
To me, that's the no-brainer. If you're going to put him on the field, ask him to do things that play to his strengths. And
Right.
certainly don't run plays that require him to be nails in the blocking game for them to succeed, because you're setting yourself up for failure.
I'll tell you this, though. If you start putting those running backs out there, flexing them out, or you start putting them in the backfield as an adjustment, okay, now go block that dude. You're going to ask Gavin Sawchuk with his 10-7 speed or whatever it is, 10-8, 10-9 speed to go out and block the edge. He's going to transfer really quick.
Yeah. Well, it's like the same thing of, I know it sounds like a pile of one guy. Like you wouldn't, and when Angelo Anthony went down, the consideration was not to split Drake Stoops out wide and have him try and run go routes to beat
Right.
the defense. Why? Because that's not what he's most successful at. So similarly, don't be asking those guys to do that. And hey, maybe Oklahoma fans can finally get their wish out of all this. Maybe it just stops the horizontal crap behind the line of scrimmage, which has just largely not worked.
Yeah, agreed. Where I was thinking when he said we've got an area on the team, he didn't say position. He said we've got an area on the team. First thing I thought of was running back, and I dismissed it immediately because, well, they've solved that. It looks like you get Tawi Walker healthy, you finally get Gavin Sawchuk going, your running backs are fine. The next thing I thought of was, is it somewhere on the coaching staff? Not trying to be funny. I'm asking the question. You've had sideline coaching penalties, 15-yarders the last two games that were costly late in the game on touchdown drives. Coaches got to pick their game up a little bit.
Yeah, coaches have to. It's widespread. They've had 2 sideline mornings in the non-conference. You had the 15-yarder on the bench in Lawrence, the 15-yarder on Venables in Stillwater. That stuff can't keep happening. You've had some frustrating play calling games from Jeff Lebby's perspective. That can't keep happening. You've had Brent Venables blow, not calling a timeout on 2 straight fourth down situations, one on offense, one on defense in the last 2 weeks.
You've got to get better.
That can't keep happening. Like it's a bunch of little stuff. And when you turn the ball over 3 times and have 5 trillion false starts, you're going to get yourself beat, and all the little stuff. Brent Venables is exactly right. Like all this stuff, you get the microscope out when you start losing football games.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember, Ryan, who came up with the statistic. Was it, it might have been Brett McMurphy. I hate to give credit where credit is not due, but it might have been somebody like that. I think it was a national guy. Said this is the 4th time Brent Venables has lost back-to-back games in less than 2 years, which matches the entire stretch, the entirety of Bob Stoops' tenure and Lincoln Riley's tenure, 23 years combined. Wow. You talk about the Oklahoma standard not being met. That's it. You can't drop back-to-back games. You can't go 6-7, first losing record since John Blake, right? But now you're getting into territory that goes back into that realm, man. I don't know. The coaching staff's got a long way to go. I think Brent's got a long way to go as a head coach. I think we're finding that out in game situations. You want to get on to West Virginia? Shall we get on to West Virginia?
Let's do it.
We're on to West Virginia. How's that? Is that enough? Is that good enough? I was a little surprised at that tenure or that tenor in the press conference when George Stoya asked that question about something that he discussed, something that he openly brought up the night before on his coach's show Monday night. And then he shows up Tuesday and gets asked about it, and he doesn't want to talk about it. And I told you guys this. I think I told y'all this.
And it's about the comment was about the Oklahoma had a Rolodex of plays on the fourth down call that would have been better.
Mm-hmm. So that fourth down call was brutal, and it got worse, and it wasn't executed right. Brent Venables said at his coach's show Monday, from Rudy's barbecue, right, to Teddy and Toby and all the fans, we had a Rolodex of plays that's better than that one. That's pretty harsh if you're a head coach and you're talking specifically about. I think Brent's intent there was to say the coaches have to be better. The coaching staff has to be better, not that damn Jeff Lebby. That was not his intent. I know Brent well enough to know that he did not intend to throw Jeff Lebby under the bus. He was probably grouping all the coaches together. But again, I'm not breaking any news here. I'm not reporting anything important. But my suspicion is I suspect that Brent got a call Tuesday at some point from the man himself, Bob Stoops. That's what I suspect. I'm just wildly guessing here that Bob probably called Brent and said, Brent, please don't throw your offensive coordinator under the bus like that.
Did you listen to that live on Monday night?
Yep. Live. No, I was doing interviews with players. I went back and watched it on the ESPN Plus.
So interesting because on Monday nights, we do interviews with players, right? And then I was bounced over to OU basketball, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I listened back to, they put out the podcast version. That's usually my Tuesday morning up to the station and back to the press conference. This is the podcast version. I did not hear that comment. It was
you cut it out.
It was interesting. I was listening for it to listen to all the context and all that stuff. So I've certainly read about it, and I know that plenty of members of the OU beat listen to that live once they are done with the players. Weirdly enough, I never heard the Rolodex comment via the podcast version. So
I should have recorded it.
So perhaps I need to go back and double check it. Maybe I just was driving and missed it. But
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Joe Castiglione called him and told him not to throw his offensive coordinator under the bus.
It was right. It was just a very clear, like literally 2 weeks ago, Brent Venables was asked, Jeff Lebby was catching a lot of heat from the Kansas. And while Brent wasn't criticizing him, he's just like, it's Oklahoma. Like, we have this pressure, all that stuff. And he was happy to talk about, like, I need to do stuff better. Everyone needs to do stuff better, stuff like that. That was not the tone on Tuesday. The tone on Tuesday was, let me read you all these statistics of where we rank in total offense and all that stuff, like a full-throated from the podium endorsement of what they're doing offensively, which was just different because Brent has not criticized him from the podium this season. Last season he had like a jokingly like, hey, that play, run it again, as like the as just a defensive coordinator, stuff like that. But this year he had not criticized Jeff from the podium on Tuesdays. I just thought it was interesting that more than any week Brent just basically shut that down as like, let me read you all the good things.
Well, you said it best on Tuesday, I believe, when you said earlier in the season, Brent kind of got in our butts a little bit about not watching or listening to or monitoring the coach's show. He kind of said, you all don't watch the coach's show? That's media. Isn't that media? Don't you watch the coach's show? You should watch the coach's show. He said that at a press conference, kind of got in our butts a little bit about not being aware of something he said or an angle he took or a phrase he used or whatever it was. I don't remember. But here's the deal. You said it best. You said he wants us to keep up with what he says in the coach's show. And then when we do, and he says something newsworthy, he pulls back and he doesn't want to talk about it at the press conference. He comes up with the Bill Belichick thing. We're on to West Virginia. Said that twice. How you say one thing, Brent, is how you say everything.
Well,
Even if you're saying it to your former All-American linebacker and your media guy, Toby Rowland extraordinaire, right? Even if you're saying it to a friendly audience at Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue, right? That stuff's going to get out, and it becomes newsworthy when you say it to them, or you say it to the at the formal press conference the next day. It's just something. It's another one of those things that Brent's learning as a head coach. Hey, I didn't maybe intend for that to get out like it did, but everybody took it and ran with it.
Well, you know what it really stems back to? He was asked about the 4th down call, about not using a timeout in Stillwater after the game.
Yeah.
His response was, "I like the call. Thought we
Yep.
were good with it." And then 48 hours later, you come out and say, "Yeah, there was a Rolodex of better plays." So did you like the call?
Right.
Did you not know what the call was?
That's possible.
All that stuff. Same thing with the Javonte Barnes. It was not supposed to be a direct snap. Well, Eddie Radosevich has phenomenal video from looking straight into that play. That ball goes directly to Javonte Barnes.
Yep.
And then Javonte Barnes immediately is like, oh God, let me keep trying to run this play. But he just totally like lost his head for a half a second trying to give the ball to Dylan Gabriel, and it just got all blown up.
Yep.
Just like, it may not have been a direct snap to Javonte Barnes, but it certainly seemed like Andrew Raym thought it was a direct snap to Javonte Barnes, and Javonte's hands were up. So again, it stems back to he wants to be very involved with the defense. That's fine. You can't have an offensive coordinator that has done 2 years total without someone breathing over his shoulder if you're going to do all that with the defense, because Jeff Lebby, for as explosive this offense has been, cannot be trusted to run this offense totally by himself without any kind of oversight. It's been a disaster. That's what Bedlam last year was, with the 90 seconds are out.
Yep, he's proven that. Speaking of Raym, he said, hey, I can take credit for one of them. I can take the blame for one of those bad snaps. I don't think I can take the blame for both of them. He executed exactly what the play was called, which is the snap right up here in the chest to Javonte Barnes. And it went through his hands and became a disaster. The other one, he said, yeah, I'll fall on the grenade there because that was a low snap and it was quick and it was early. It was before. And he said the crowd got to him. Ryan, let me ask you, have you ever heard a player and a coach, offensive coordinator say, and maybe the offensive coordinator got it over the headset from Raym himself or from Dylan Gabriel via Raym, I don't know, on the sideline. Maybe the communication process there is that Raym said, Coach, I couldn't hear the snap. I couldn't hear him clapping. I couldn't hear anything he was saying. I panicked and snapped it. That's what it sounds like. I've never heard a guy say, yeah, the crowd took me out of it. The crowd got to me. That's just giving too much credit to the other team's fans, and they're going to do it again. What do you think the BYU is going to do when they go on the road?
This is the same guy that screwed up a snap in the Texas end, and Dylan Gabriel just was able to pluck it off the turf and throw it away. You remember
had a couple of high ones early in the season?
Yeah. You remember last year? It felt like Dylan Gabriel was pulling snaps out of the dirt left, right, and like Andrew Raym's not good at snapping the football, and he's a third-year starter. I'm kind of done with any of the excuses of, oh, well, the crowd noise, whatever. You're a third-year center. You've played in Boone Pickens before, right? Like you've played on this stage. I don't understand how over and over that becomes a thing. If Caden Green, who played really well as a true freshman at left guard beside you, is handling this thing, you shouldn't have to be worried about the crowd noise and all that stuff.
I said we were going to get on to West Virginia. We didn't get on to West Virginia. I got some stuff, though, about West Virginia you're going to want to hear. Plus, we're going to discuss coming up, we're going to discuss the SEC scheduling models for 2025 and beyond. I'll ask you this. Did we get a sneak peek at it today? I'll let you know. Plus, yesterday was National Signing Day. If you're interested in basketball and softball, and I know you are, we're going to tell you all about it. Plus, golly, we might even get into what's going on at USC, maybe, because I think this is worth discussing too. Things there, I can tell you, are not going to get better anytime soon. All that's next on the AllSooners Podcast. If you're on the Twitter, give us a follow at all_Sooners. I'm at John E. Hoover. Ryan is at _Ryan Chapman. Follow Ross. He's got an N on the basketball team, don't forget. So you're going to want to follow Ross. Ross Lovelace is his Twitter handle. And Randall is at Randall Sweet 5, and he's our recruiting guy. So follow him if you like the recruiting. The website is allsooners.com, Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. Remember, we're all free at All Sooners. No signups, no emails, no passwords, no credit cards needed. This segment of the All Sooners podcast is presented by Infinite Asset Advisors, and I got a quick question for you. How much of your retirement savings are you willing to lose? Think about it. You want to lose all of it? You want to lose some of it? Or would you prefer not to lose any of it? I know which one I'm picking. If you're already nearing retirement or you're already in retirement, the math and science studies have proven, guys, that a few bad market years could wipe away the kind of retirement you've dreamed of. How much would that suck? But there is a way to safely grow your money and not have any market risk. All you got to do, you can turn your savings into guaranteed lifetime income. Think about that. Wow. Infinite Asset Advisors not only helps you plan for retirement, but they also show you how to become debt-free before you get there. They are experts in financial planning, retirement planning, and even estate planning. Just visit the website infiniteassetadvisors.com to learn more. Plus, you can always email the guys at team@infiniteassetadvisors.com or just give them a call, 512-710-0130. How about that? All right, we're on to West Virginia, Ryan. We pitched it, we teased it, we said we were going to do it. Now let's do it. On to West Virginia. You know how tough West Virginia is this year? They're a lot tougher than you think. They're a lot tougher than you look, and they're a hell of a lot tougher than the 14th best team in the Big 12 Conference, which is where they were picked, dead last, behind Houston, behind Cincinnati, behind BYU, behind UCF, and Baylor, and TCU, Texas Tech, and all the... They were picked behind everybody. Guess who's not behind any of those guys? West Virginia. Get some of these numbers, Ryan. You're going to love this. Number 29 in the nation in fewest penalties per game. 37th in fewest penalty yards. Uh-oh. That's where Oklahoma struggles the most, is penalties and penalty yards. That's a matchup that goes heavily in West Virginia's favor. They're sound in the special teams. And they're also excellent in the special teams. They blocked 3 kicks, number 4 in the country in block kicks. They are, punt return defense, number 9 in the nation in covering punts. Not going to get anything there. West Virginia is averaging almost 34 minutes per game. They're number 4 in the nation in time of possession. Uh-oh! That means you got to maximize your possessions and score a lot. Score when you have the football. You can't play around and miss field goals and have turnovers. They're number 2 in the Big 12. They're number 12 nationally in fewest sacks allowed per game. Did Oklahoma have a sack in their most recent game?
No, I think that Tom Green, our friend at 247, crunched the numbers. Oklahoma sackless 2 games in a row, the first time since 2004.
Wow, really? 2004? It's good stuff by Tom. Holy cow. I didn't realize that. West Virginia is also rushing at 218 yards per game. That's number 7 in the nation. Uh-oh. It's a bad matchup for OU. Every time I said uh-oh, it's a bad matchup for OU. You also see Garrett Green, the quarterback, he wear Vaseline on his jersey last year's game in Morgantown. He was untackleable at times. Garrett Green is number 4 in the nation in passing yards per completion, 16 yards per completion, 15.93. Uh-oh. Those are all bad matchups for Oklahoma.
Yeah, and it seems like, in a weird way, since the bye week, Hoove, every single week Oklahoma's facing either a top 10 rushing attack or Ollie Gordon, who's the top 1 running back in college football right now. And it's yet again, it was one of those things that, because probably I caught the Morgantown flu, that I've tried to delete that weekend from my memory from a year ago, just because of it. I literally missed Bedlam last year, which I don't like missing work or things like that. But Oklahoma simply could not stop Garrett Green once he entered the game. Like, the worst thing for Oklahoma was seeing JT Daniels, the starting quarterback, stay on the sideline. And everything you talked about right there, Hoove, is everything that popped up in that final possession. The Mountaineers basically stayed on the field for 6.5 minutes just to set up a game-winning chip shot field goal, which they executed to perfection. And now it's going to be Oklahoma like the worst nightmare I think for an Oklahoma fan should be hearing that a team wants to come in and shorten the football game and make every possession matter because Jeff Lebby has like 5 possessions a game that you want to just fire into the sun and never hear from again.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. Couple of quotes from Neil Brown. Does he still use the preseason poll for motivation? He says, I think motivation is important. It's something that we will keep in front of them because until the year's over, we still have something to prove. It all starts with what people thought of us. That's what they thought of this program at the start of the year, and we're out to prove that wrong right up until the end. Uh-oh, a team Oklahoma's facing that's motivated to beat them. Ryan, you noted earlier in the week or earlier in the season that OU has made a habit out of losing their final game ever to somebody. Could this fall in that? OU's opened as a 13.5-point favorite. I think it's 12.5 right now. Could this fall in that category as well?
It absolutely could, because Oklahoma's been about as undisciplined as you could get the last couple of weeks, whether it's penalties, false starts, Gillifruit line up a yard offside because they're trying to go so fast that he can't get himself set, whether it's turnovers. You think of the 6 turnovers in the last 2 weeks who've both snaps, whether they were Andrew Ram's fault or the fault of a running back not knowing what's supposed to happen. Those Oklahoma State did nothing to cause that defensively. Right. That is just Oklahoma taking out a big roughneck shotgun and firing its foot off twice. Marcus Stripling not being able to catch the kickoff in Lawrence. That is a good spot by Kansas to recognize that situation and to kick it there. But Oklahoma controls who they put on the kickoff coverage team. They put a guy out there who then panic. That's an Oklahoma issue. Like, half of these turnovers should be wiped away and should not have happened. And so it's a team that's trending in the wrong direction in discipline, all that stuff. And on top of the fact that every time this year, Oklahoma, it feels like it's been given the opportunity to extend a game against a living, breathing opponent outside of Iowa State in the mid to second quarter on, Oklahoma's offense has said, no, thank you. We would not like to take this game and push it to a more comfortable spot. Well, guess what? All the drivers are going to matter if West Virginia is shortening the football game. So I think that making sure that the Mountaineers continue there or start a winning streak against Oklahoma, making sure the Mountaineers get to leave the Big 12 with a victory over Oklahoma, I don't think that's out of the cards at all this weekend.
Something else Neil Brown said was he was asked about playing both C.J. Donaldson and Jaheim White together in the backfield at the same time. He said, we tried to do it the other day. C.J. got stepped on. He's fine, but we were going to play a little more two-back in that game. He said, I think it's time and place. It just depends on how defenses play different personnel groups. If you're going to play 2 running backs, they both got to block, and those guys are both physical runners, apparently capable blockers as well. If they go 2 back with any kind of consistency, I think Oklahoma's going to have a hard time stopping that. We'll see. Not that necessarily stopping the 2 back set, but putting the 2 backs back there, making Oklahoma get big, and then throwing the deep ball with Garrett Green, or allowing Garrett Green to move in the pocket or run for his life. Garrett Green's got track speed almost as much as Jason Bean does. So if he gets the corner, if he gets the edge, it's going to be trouble.
Did you hear what quarterback Garrett Green was compared to on the coach show on Monday night?
No, I guess not.
Brent Venables was like, hey, you know what the worst thing possible sometimes when you were playing Texas? If Vince Young was back there and you covered everybody and he took off, that was like the worst thing in the world. I'm here to tell you, I don't think that Brent Venables was trying to say that Garrett Green's Vince Young. He's not Vince Young. But I just thought it was interesting that that's like when Brent Venables thinks about, okay, what's the threat of this guy? He goes back to, remember when you'd cover everything on the back end of Vince Young would torch you? Like, it shows he's got great respect for Garrett Green. I don't know how you couldn't have great respect for Garrett Green when everybody watched him get 119 yards and 2 scores on 14 carries last year in Morgantown.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about what's going on at USC, just because I know the fan base is so polarized about it. Alex Grinch got fired. Their defense is terrible. What was their deal? They're 100 or worse in everything.
Like 100, it's not who. It's not. They're like 118th or worse, and like they're like in the bottom 10 in almost everything.
Yeah, rushing, passing, pass efficiency, I think. Total defense, scoring defense. It's the scoring defense that finally got him because you lose those games on the scoreboard 52-42, and you win one. You beat Cal, but you beat him 52-49 or 50-49, whatever that was. That's your defensive coordinator. I don't care who your boss is. I don't care what school you're at. I don't care who your quarterback is. You give up those totals and lose games, you're going to get fired. So, but I'll say this. I know this is an extremely unpopular take, but I've got the numbers here to back me up, so shut up. I'll do like Brent. I'm right, though. That's what Venables said at one of his press conferences. When Grinch got to Oklahoma, that Mike Stoops, Ruffin McNeil defense ranked 114th in the country. The next year, remember what we all said in 2017 or 2018 as well? If you could just rank not last, just don't finish last in defense, you're going to have a chance to win a national championship. Well, Alex Grinch took that defense from 114 total defense. We're talking total yards allowed, NCAA numbers here. I'm not going into analytics or yards per play or yards per possession or any of that. Just using one number, and it's total yards. He took them from 114 to 38. That 2019 defense was a top 40 defense. Think about that. That was a shocking turnaround. Then the next year, they were 29th. That was an even more, or possibly almost as much, let me put it that way, shocking turnaround. You're right. You go from the 120s almost to 29, to the top 30. Now that last year, 2021, obviously it took a hit. They dipped. They were 78th in the country. Part of that was your quarterback couldn't stop turning the football over, so he got benched. You know, that whole thing. You guys remember. But Oklahoma defense last year, in the first year under Brent Venables, remember Mike Stoops, Ruffin McNeil, 114. Last year, they were 121. It's 75 right now. But let me ask you guys this. Would you take a 38 ranking on defense right now? A 29 ranking on defense right now? Hell yeah, you would. So I think Alex Grinch gets a little bit of an unfair shake. There's no doubt that last year at OU, he was not a great defensive coordinator. He was lost a lot of times. His players were lost. But even that 78th in 2021, that would have been something that in 2018 would have really helped. In 2017, I think, would have really helped. Last year would have really helped, ranking 78. But I just think Alex Grinch, I think people are trying to rewrite history a little bit.
I think that the issue for Grinch is that he never evolved. He comes in with a very simple system, which the whole point of it was, turnovers equal victory, all that stuff.
Yep.
But the longer he spent in this conference, the more offensive lines were unaffected by the shifting because they were just like, hey, Oklahoma's going to shift. Don't worry about it.
Cool. Yeah.
Stuff like that. And he had the same issues. They still couldn't cover a tight end. They still couldn't cover a running back out of the backfield. And I also think it's important to not forget, though, Brent Venables basically being like, the guys on defense didn't know a lick about football when we got here. That wasn't being taught. The only thing being taught was the system. And he's said a couple of times about the football IQ. I just wondered if Grinch was in one spot for long enough. Once you got things fixed, then were you going to add more and more, or was it going to still be the same super simplistic, you're just playing a couple of coverages, stuff like that? When he got to USC, I think everyone just looked at the film from Oklahoma in 21 and said, okay, don't worry about the shift. Don't worry about any of this stuff. And his defense never evolved. So I think he's going to have to, he was really good at getting across his principles of what he wanted. I think the issue is his principles of what he wanted to do got found out pretty quickly. And he is going to have to do some soul searching about how do you add more? Because it's a gimmick defense. I mean, let's be honest. It's just, they play a couple of coverages. They just want to shift. And then it's all about getting those guys to fire off with confidence. You saw last year, they were terrible in all the metrics, but they finally got all those turnovers that he was talking about. And Lincoln Riley was happy to have him aboard. Yeah,
you're right. He's got to figure out he's got to figure out how to evolve. He's got to figure out what he needs, what he wants to be as a defensive coordinator. It kind of reminds me, I've been hearing, and it's not pervasive, it's not everywhere, but I keep hearing this theme, Ryan, and see if you have heard it as well. People right now are saying once Brent gets his players on this program, Once Brent gets rid of all those Lincoln Riley recruits, this program is going to be better, right? There's 29 guys on the 2 deep right now, 29 that were Lincoln Riley recruits, okay? So what does that say? My question is it the same people who are refusing to acknowledge that half of Bob Stoops' 2002 deep were actually John Blake recruits? It's the same people that refuse to acknowledge that, is my guess. Those are Bob Stoops players. Well, no, actually John Blake recruited them and signed them and coached them for a couple of years. Half of that team was, half of that 2 deep. We're getting the same kind of blowback, but once we get all those Lincoln Riley guys out of here, 30 guys on the 2 deep right now are Lincoln Riley guys. So I don't know what exactly that's saying, but maybe, like I said, slow your roll and stop trying to rewrite history.
Yeah, it feels like if you just stopped halfway through that statement and it's like, hey, once you get all of Brent Venables guys is in, and you sit down, I look at, okay, this is what the recruiting class, defensive line-wise, they have committed. And you're telling me that in 2 years they're contributing. I'm there. You know what I mean? It's just
for sure. They're getting a lot better on defense. I really believe that. Despite that number that I read you earlier, 114 and 78, I think they're a lot better on defense, culturally especially.
Yeah, but it's like, it's because Brent Venables is one of the elite defensive recruiters like in college football. That has nothing to do with who was here before him. So it's one of those things too of like, hey, Drake Stoops, I don't know what anyone wants. What do people want to label him as a player? He was the only reason you were in Bedlam. Like, you might. None of those new wide receivers have come close to helping to chip in like Drake Stoops has this year.
Oh, that's 100% true. 100%. And he was very much a Lincoln Riley recruit, although Brent Venables recruited him when he was like 10 years old. So
is he technically a Stoops player? Does Drake get to fall under the Stoops tree?
Yes, 100%. He's a Bob Stoops recruit from way back in the day, 2001, I think. Anyway, one more note on Lincoln. You guys will love this. This is his second year at USC. This is his third year total to coach Caleb Williams. He got Baker in 2017 for 1 year as the head coach. He was his quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator for 2 years. But as his head coach, he got Baker for 1 year. You can't screw up 1 year, right? He got Kyler as the starting quarterback for 1 year. He was a red shirt the first year because he had to transfer, and then the second year he was Baker's backup. But that third year, he only got 1 year as the starter under Lincoln Riley as the head coach. He got Jalen for 1 year as the head coach. Again, it's kind of hard to screw up 1 year, especially on a transfer, right? Like Jalen Hurts was. Jalen Hurts came in, and he wasn't the finished product, but he was not wet clay, right, when he got here. Jalen Hurts knew what he was as a football player. Lincoln Riley made him into a more efficient quarterback, although people would still argue that he didn't throw the ball to CeeDee Lamb enough and locked on to other receivers too much, and I get it. He ran the ball too much, but that was great because he ran for 1,300 yards and 20 touchdowns. So let him go. Okay, we get a little more recent. He had Spencer Rattler for 3 years. He had him for redshirt year, and then he had him for 1 year as a starter, and then he had him for 1 year as the starter, half the year, and he lost his job. Spencer Rattler got worse every year Lincoln Riley coached him. Right? And then he had Caleb. He's got Caleb now for 3 years. He won the Heisman Trophy last year. Can't knock that, right? I don't know if he got better or worse, but since his 1 year at Oklahoma, right? Came off the bench halfway through, won the job, transfers to USC, wins the Heisman Trophy. Caleb has gotten worse this year. Every quarterback that he's played, that he's developed, has gotten worse under Lincoln Riley. Think about that.
Not good news for Malachi Nelson, which is why you have all the Jalen Daniels rumors that USC is targeting the Kansas quarterback or has made contact or all that fun stuff. But it's been the real travesty of this last 3 years is that Caleb Williams is going to play in 0 playoff games because Lincoln Riley couldn't put a defense alongside him.
Yeah, I agree. None of okay, so he had Baker, he had Kyler, he had Jalen, he had Rattler for better or worse, and he had Caleb, and he is still over in playoff wins.
Tough.
Says a lot.
Tough.
Says a lot. Porter Moser's got it rolling at basketball at the Lloyd Noble Center. 89-59, they open up the season. What was that, Monday night? Yeah, Monday night because I was back home Tuesday. Blew Central Michigan out. I thought I've got some names here. I was able to watch through kind of one eye the game, but not really study it, pay attention to it. I do know that watching about 4 or 5 minutes of OU play basketball this year, Porter Moser's right. He's 100% right. Way more athletic, way faster, way probably more active on defense, longer arms. They're going to get out. They're going to run a little bit more than they have. I looked up at one point. I think it was 11 minutes left. They had 55 points. And I'm like, that's all? 55 points? And they finished with 89. So they did what they had to do. I think this team's going to be better, Ryan. What do you think?
Yeah, and it felt like the first 2 years when they'd like hunker down and play defense, they'd force turnovers, but there were shot clock violations or like passes out of bounds, stuff like that. They're able to get into passing lanes, deflect the ball, get out and run. And I think that when you look at like Otega Owe, he looked like a completely different dude offensively. Last year, it was he could only dribble with his left. He was trying to just get to the rim. Everything else was super uncomfortable. He looked just calm, cool, collected, happy to take jumpers, all that stuff. J.V. McCollum showed he had a little bit of that step back game. But the biggest difference Porter Moser talked about is now they've been able to bring in like experienced guys off the bench. Jalen Moore, who's played a little bit in the ACC at Georgia Tech, guy that's coming off the bench. Latrey Darthard was coming off the bench. John Hughley hadn't supplanted Sam Godwin quite yet at center. That was an experienced player coming off the bench. And that's going to be depth because Porter's talked about for 2 years, depth. Well, usually they're throwing freshmen into the fray off the bench. And so it'll be interesting. Central Michigan's not good, so still fully in wait and see mode. I don't know what that's going to mean for how much better or worse they'll be in the Big 12 this year, but they certainly look more athletic and have some more options to kind of run the offense. And they kind of have a non-conference schedule that's going to allow them to ramp into the year and kind of get to know each other a little bit better before they get some of those huge tests.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more out of a guy like Latrey Darthard, senior transfer. John Hughley, you mentioned. How good is he in the low post? Is he a glass eater, space eater? Is he going to bang people? I saw him get knocked down the other day, and I was a little surprised because the guy that ran into him was a little bit slight. Might have been one of his own teammates. McCollum is explosive. You've got Milo Suzon obviously back. You've got Otega Owe obviously back. Those guys are the heart and soul of the team. They better be. Jalen Moore, as you mentioned. Jacob Cole is a guy that can, as a freshman, come in and probably get some minutes. They got Rivaldo Suarez as well. Very quick, explosive, athletic dude. I don't know how effective he's going to be as a scorer, but he's experienced. He's a senior. They've got an X factor, shall we say, on the end of the bench. Our man Reed Lovelace. Ross Lovelace's brother is a walk-on at OU, and we're expecting that he's going to take this team to the next level, right?
Clearly.
You got this, Reed. You got it. Trust me.
No pressure.
No pressure. Signing day yesterday. Dayton Forsyth from Dale signed. Kual Atak signed out of Fort Worth. They got better shooting-wise with Dayton Forsyth, and they got better post-wise, at least maybe more of a stretch four presence. Kual Atak can shoot. He's 6'9", super long arms. He's kind of slender, but he can absolutely shoot the three.
Yeah, and the most important thing, too, is Forsyth, top player in Oklahoma. Porter Moser has made a priority out of making sure that he takes care of recruiting Oklahoma, doesn't want anything to slip through the cracks there. And then, yeah, you get a lot more length. It sounds like the development project for a guy on the roster right now, Luke Northweather, who's kind of a stretch four type guy. Oklahoma sounds really, really excited by that. We'll see how that plays out during the season. But if Oklahoma could make a living out of getting some length, stashing those guys for a year and developing, then Porter Moser is going to be very successful if that's something that he can kind of basically make a hallmark of what he's trying to do out of the recruiting ranks.
Yeah, yesterday was signing day, Ryan, for softball too. And Patty Gasso just went and signed, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she signed every player in America.
Yeah, I think it was approximately 5 billion signees for Patty Gasso and the Sooners, which makes a lot of sense though, because like when you start going down like all the players she's going to lose this year, I don't want to like make Oklahoma fans like a little nervous, but like you start going through Terry Jennings, Jada Coleman, Kinsey
Yep.
Hansen, Nicole May, Kelly Maxwell, Carly Keeney, Boone's in that group. I believe Alyssa Burrito's in that group. Lena Torres is in that. Like, that's a lot of names
A
that are
lot of
coming off the
seniors.
board.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. So
I was just going to say, so
I was-
Patty Gasso needed not just that, but she needed the big class. And Patty Gasso, per usual, is doing it both grabbing the best prospects in the state of Oklahoma, going coast to coast. I mean, where do you want to start with this thing? Because it's so wide ranging.
she got 2 catchers. She got 2 players from Indiana. She got 2 players from Oklahoma. She got 4 infielders and 1 outfielder, and a pitcher, left-handed pitcher. Audrey Lowry is the pitcher from Indiana. Let's start with Tia Malloy, infielder from, just Redmond, Washington, suburb of Seattle. No big deal. Her dad is Lawyer Malloy, NFL superstar, Super Bowl champ, and her mom was a 2-time track All-American, national champion in track. No pressure on Tia Malloy to be great at sports, right?
Yeah, no pressure on her from the parents because surely there's not going to be like athletic siblings. Wait, did any of you guys watch the Women's College World Series? Because Kiki Malloy, the superstar for Tennessee, yeah, that's the same Malloy family. Kiki's younger sister, Tia, that's who Oklahoma is getting. I don't think that Patty Gasso could be more excited about that. Tia is supposed to track in a very similar way as far as having the absolute power and athleticism, something that Patty Gasso more than anyone has shown she knows how to develop. It'll just be not familiar with, one of the best things that Patty Gasso and JT Gasso are at, not just all the analytics of your swing and all that stuff, but developing this patient, batting approach, stuff like that. We'll have to see what that looks like as Tia Malloy takes to that. But she's got all the makings of a big time player that can make big plays in Oklahoma City for years to come.
Yeah, I'll go down the list real quick. We mentioned Audrey Lowry, the left-handed pitcher from Indiana. Cheney Helton, outfielder from Coweta. Riley Zach, I think that's right. Zache, Zachy, I think, catcher out of South Bend, Indiana.
And her
Tia Malloy.
sister is a year younger. That's the duo of sisters that Patty Gasso picked up.
Yep, one's committed, one's signed now.
Yeah, a month and a half ago, whenever that was.
I believe that's right. Yep. Corey Hicks is a catcher out of San Jose. Katie McKay is an infielder from Caddo. Gabby Garcia is the infielder from Chandler, Arizona. And Sydney Barker is an infielder from Rockland, California. Again, this is class of 2024. So if you didn't hear a name that you're familiar with, it probably because that player is in the class of 2025, who Patty's already got a handful of commits from. So off they go, man.
Yeah, and they'll all be joining the team next fall. So none of these signees will be with the team this year. Some of the differences of softball and basketball signing day, obviously, versus football, what you're used to. But if you want to get the final wrap up on last year's signees who are true freshmen this year, all that stuff, our man Randall's going to be out at Marita Hines this evening, Thursday night, as the battle series wraps up. So I'm sure that Patty Gass will be speaking to everybody, as well as a selection of players, as there's going to be a pretty large media contingent. Randall will be our man on the scene there. So be sure you're headed to allsooners.com at about 9:30, 10-ish tonight is when that usually has been popping up. When those post-game interviews and stuff are usually ready to hit the site, just based off how long the battle series games run.
So Patty signed 8. Ryan said their class of 2024, which means they won't be here until next fall, which means their first season is going to be 2025. First year in the SEC. This is your SEC class, first SEC class. So that should be fun to watch. Must be nice to to just build a dynasty and then just sit and watch it reload itself every year. That's this class is pretty special. All right, we'll finish with this, Ryan. OU baseball, but don't go anywhere because it's really about OU football. Trust me. Missouri and Texas were announced today as OU's permanent opponents. Call them rivals if you want. In baseball, Missouri and Texas are OU's permanent opponents in the SEC in baseball. That'll also start in 2025. Could that be the same thing for football? Could we see, we don't know what the long term, we know in 2024 the schedule's set. They're only playing 8 games. They're playing Texas, of course. Who else are they playing? Auburn, LSU, Missouri, Ole Miss on the road, and then their home games are Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, and of course Texas is in Dallas. But could this become, Ryan, something like, well, it worked for football, or I'm sorry, it worked for baseball. They're they're testing it out for baseball to see how two permanent rivals or an OU Missouri. Are they putting it on? Are they writing it down in pencil right now to maybe use a Sharpie later on?
I don't think so. And it's just because the math works out really easy, where if you play 8 games, if you have one rival and then the rest of those games are a home and home, that is one way that you play everyone in the conference every 4 years in a home and home. Or if you do a 9 game schedule, you can protect 3 of those rivals. The rest of those games, the other 6 games, home and home, you'll play every team in your conference every 4 years. I think they really like that, especially going off this iteration of the SEC where Georgia still hasn't played in College Station. I think that if they move to that 9 game schedule, Texas, Missouri, plus another one are for sure the 3 teams that Oklahoma will be paired with. I just don't think that they might switch off of that or go with 2 or whatever. But the SEC needs to go to 9 games because they have too many rivalries to protect with just one game
Yeah.
being protected. Like Alabama has 3 or 4 games they need to protect. Auburn has 3 or 4 games they need to protect. I think it's just about ESPN forking over the money. We'll see Disney shedding salary left, right, and center. Maybe
Yep.
that means that here in a year or two, they'll have enough extra money to go to the SEC and say, yes, we will pay you for that 9th game.
Hey, what could that look like? Disney might even be selling ESPN. We've heard that more than once over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
So,
So
what could that look like come 2024, 2025? Saban said, remember, he's let it slip in October, I think, on one of his coaches' shows. He said, the way we're going to do our 7-team, one fixed, you're going to play everybody every 4 years. So almost every guy at every school is going to play every other team in your conference. He let it slip a little bit. Oops. But he might have been just oversimplifying, just looking at 2024 and not looking long term. I don't know. I can't hardly at all speak for Nick Saban, right?
well,
So
and we're supposed to get we have the matchups like you mentioned. It sounds like in December we're supposed to get the actual dates for the 2024 schedule. We've gotten the dates
okay.
and stuff for like the Big Ten schedule and stuff like that. But I think the SEC, it's been reported by Ross Dellinger, I want to say, who's now with Yahoo, that's supposed to come in December. So something to look out for.
When that first broke, I think the Sankey said we'll look forward to releasing the dates in November, possibly in November. I think he said. Actually, I think he said possibly November or early December.
Yeah.
So we might get it this month.
Yeah, late.
The actual dates.
Yeah, sounds like late November, early December. And then as he shared with everyone in the press box in Dallas at the Cotton Bowl, because of the new TV deal, their 11 a.m. kickoff should be announced in the summer. So not all kickoff times, but it sounds like dates for those games by mid-December at the latest. And it sounds like you'll know at least one docket of kickoff times well before the season gets going. So,
by the way, speaking of baseball, this year, 2024, next spring, right, the next baseball season, the Big 12 now has 13 baseball playing schools, and the schedule goes from 8 conference opponents to 10 conference opponents. Don't know what the SEC is going to do baseball wise, but they did reveal future opponents today. I'm sorry, permanent opponents today. And there are 16 programs in the SEC who play baseball. So if you love your OU baseball, cloudy future. We don't know what it's going to look like beyond this coming year. And this year's weird just because you're jumping from, like I said, 8 conference opponents to 10. You're going from 24 conference games to 30 conference games. So every weekend a little bit more meaningful. If you're an OU baseball fan, am I right?
for sure, they'll get that thing going before you know it here, February, right?
Yep, supposed to get it going in February.
So before you know it, Diamond Sports season will be upon you.
Yes, looking forward to it. No more fall scrimmages. This segment, which was excellent, by the way, of the AllSooners podcast, was presented by Infinite Asset Advisors. Just go to infiniteassetadvisors.com to learn how you can get debt-free and begin real retirement planning right now. Don't wait to do this. It's important because whether it's retirement, private banking, family asset protection, estate planning, or living trusts, Just let Corey and his team take a look at your portfolio and get you on the way to taking control of your financial future. It's easy. Just call 512-710-0130 or email team@infiniteassetadvisors.com, or just check out their website, infiniteassetadvisors.com. Coming up next, we're going to hit some recruiting with Randall. AllSooners Podcast continues next. All right, we're back. Final segment of the AllSooners Podcast. Remember, if you like the podcast, go ahead and like the podcast. Give us a 5-star rating. That helps us out immensely because it helps spread the word and make suggestions on our podcast. If you could share it on social media, we'd really appreciate that as well. Get our name out there, get us out there, make the podcast a little bigger so we can get you more quality information. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe and mash that like button, all that good stuff. You know how to do it. So let's talk recruiting. We've brought in Randall. Randall is from parts unknown. He's actually in Oklahoma City right now. Yeah, they're doing some things to his apartment. He's got some noise going on. His dishwasher's getting up and walking across the room. Randall, how's it going?
Oh, it's good. It's nice to actually be back in my apartment podcasting. Last week I had to do a podcast from a separate, undisclosed location that was really another person's apartment. But yeah, it's nice to be back in my own space now.
Any takeaways you want to add to the conversation from the Bedlam game on Saturday? Ryan and I kind of hit some of the high points, but I want to get your takes.
I think I'll be kind of succinct here. I know that a lot of times when a team loses, their fan base, a lot of times the fan base of that team copes by saying, well, I think we're the better team. I think if we play 10 times, we win 8 out of 10, things like that. But I do think after watching Bedlam, from just an observer standpoint, I do think that Oklahoma appeared to be the better team at various stretches of that game, but did shoot themselves in the foot multiple times, and costly penalties, bad play call, all of those things add up into one. And the fumbles, that's probably turnovers, that's key. But if Oklahoma is able to clean up some of those turnovers, some of those penalties, maybe make a few different play calls in situations, not drop passes. I don't think that it's a far stretch to say that OU could have won that game and could have won it by multiple scores, I should say. So if you are an OU fan, that is, I guess, the lone encouragement going forward, is that the things that OU did to lose are fixable.
I'll say it this way. I hope this goes over the way I mean for it to go. I think Oklahoma has better football players. I think Oklahoma State clearly played better football.
I agree, 100%.
They took their 2 and 3 stars and went up against OU's 3 and 4 and 5 stars, and they played a better football game. Simple as that.
I agree, 100%. The Oklahoma State's best player, Ollie Gordon, OU did a pretty good job of keeping in check, but there when it mattered, they were able to let him get loose, and that cost him the game.
Yeah, for sure. Any thoughts as we transition into the West Virginia game? We talked about the quality of team that West Virginia is and how West Virginia does really good in a number of areas that are just not good matchups for Oklahoma.
Yeah, that running game, they've got C.J. Donaldson. Obviously, Garrett Green cut up OU's defense last year. I'm sure Brent Venables remembers that final drive where it seemed like OU just could not get off the field with the game tied at 20. And Garrett Green just ran right down into field goal range, and West Virginia kicked the game-winning field goal. That same style of game could happen over again if OU does not, right the ship and kind of correct some of those defensive mistakes that we've seen in the past 2 weeks against Kansas, against Oklahoma State. Obviously, Garrett Green, much more mobile quarterback than Alan Bowman, who even he was able to run in the touchdown on the OU defense. So those linebackers, it'll be really important for the Sooners. If Danny Stutzman is able to play, and if he's able to play it healthy, that'd be a huge boost for OU. But I think even then, Kip Lewis is going to be a good option. This might be a good game for Kobe McKenzie, who is maybe not as good in pass coverage, but is a really great downhill physical run stopper. So this might be a good Kobe McKenzie matchup. But again, the Sooners are going to need to really stay in their rush lanes. Otherwise, they will get torched. Keep contained on the outside. Otherwise, Garrett Green will escape and he'll burn them just like he did last year.
Yeah, especially if they go with that two-back formation that Ryan and I mentioned earlier. If they're able to successfully deploy that, that could be problems for Oklahoma. And here's the deal: Kansas can't really throw the football. They threw the football against Oklahoma. Oklahoma State, not really great at throwing the football. They threw the football, looked like all pros. They made Rashad Owens look like an all-pro wide receiver. Terrell Owens, right? So I think we said it in the stand-up on Wednesday. Well, no, it was after Brent Venables, so Tuesday. They're seventh in the country. West Virginia is in rushing, but they're 98th or 90th or something like that in passing. They shouldn't be able to throw the football with any success. But guess what? Neither should Kansas. Neither should Oklahoma State. So, like I said, some bad matchups for OU possibly coming down the pike on Saturday. The weather's supposed to be nice. I see it's a high of 63 degrees on Saturday. A little bit overcast, partly cloudy, I guess is how you say it. So the weather should be fantastic football weather. Randall, we're looking at commitments coming down the pike for Oklahoma as well, including possibly they got their fingers crossed on one tomorrow night.
Yeah, Alexander Shield Knight, the star defensive lineman. He plays some tight end too, but mostly defensive lineman at Wagner High School out in what is that, northwestern Oklahoma? Am I getting my directions correct?
Northeast.
North.
You better get on the GPS. It's east of Tulsa.
Yeah, so just said the wrong way. But yeah, Wagner defensive
Don't
lineman.
go northwest.
Oh, I'd be a long way from Wagner then. Career sacks leader at Wagner High School. This is a team that's got players playing at Texas Tech right now. That's got Malcolm Rodriguez playing for the Detroit Lions in the NFL. I mean, they've put players in Oklahoma State. Power 5 guys have come from Wagner on the defensive side of the football. And guess what? Alexander Shield Knight, as just midway through his junior year, has outsacked all of them. So that's pretty impressive. This is obviously a guy who comes from, again, maybe not the biggest name. This isn't Duncanville High School in Texas, but Wagner is a solid program. Tough kids. They put out good players a lot of times, and Alexander Shield Knight seems like the next in line. From what I've seen, he's a real technician on the defensive line. He knows how to set offensive linemen up. He knows how to use his hands, how to get by guys. And I think that when he gets in the realm of being coached by Miguel Chavis, being coached by Todd Bates, some of those guys on how to just even refine that hand usage, that technique even more than he already has, I think that he could blossom into a really good edge rusher, really good defensive lineman, really physically strong player. I mean, tons of play strength, functional strength in his game that you see whenever he's engaging with offensive linemen. I mean, when he puts that initial punch on a guy, again, this is Wagner High School, so it's not 6A Texas football. When he puts that punch on a guy, those offensive linemen are on their heels a lot of times. That's something that you love to see, especially for a guy who's playing some smaller school football. 3-star recruit, probably could be rated a little higher if he was maybe, again, playing at a bigger school, but still offers from, I believe, Arkansas, I believe A&M. Oklahoma State, I know, has been hard on the trail for Alexander Shield Knight. But like you said, it seems like OU is in a pretty good position to come out on top of this recruitment tomorrow night. He is announcing at Wagner High School's football stadium ahead of their first-round playoff game against Broken Bow. So should be a fun one there. I would imagine that Wagner is able to get the victory and move on. They are undefeated this season. He's been a huge help in that. And I think that the Oklahoma 2025 defensive line class is just going to continue to grow. If Shield Knight does end up committing tomorrow like we'd expect, then that would be him and Kamori Moore from Lee Summit North, both on that defensive line in the 2025 class. It's a great start for a class that, again, is over a year out.
Yeah, Shield Knight is 6'2", 220, really thick, broad chest, shoulders. I'm looking at a picture of him right now, and he's kind of flexing a little bit. He's according to 24/7 Sports, the number 12 player in Oklahoma, according to the composite, number 11. Oklahoma's done a nice job of getting local recruits, and not just in the 24 class, but in the 25 class. They're really starting to stock up on the 25s when you look at, and we'll get to one of those here in a minute, but they're starting to stock up on those 25s, especially guys at Carl Albert.
Yeah, you mentioned Carl Albert. I mean, that's Marcus James. That's Trinae Washington. I mean, that's two guys who they got commitments from last week. And that's not to mention the Xavier Robinsons, the Kevin Sperrys, who they had commitments from previous months. And you mentioned that local 2025 class. I mean, That's now Jaden Nickens. That's now Kevin Sperry. That's now Elijah Thomas. That's now Trinae Washington, Marcus James, possibly Alexander Shieldnight tomorrow. I mean, you could have 7 kids in that 2025 class, with 6 of the first 7 being okay prep prospects. And that's pretty good for Brent Venables and company. Obviously, they're going to recruit nationally. That's what OU, that's what Brent Venables, that's what big time programs do. They're going to continue to get these kids from Florida, California, you name it. But early on in the process, locking up the top players in the local region, not letting those guys, kind of stray, take too many visits out of the state, explore other options, really locking them down, making sure that you have your state on lock to start that recruiting cycle is a huge, huge piece of the pie, because, I mean, now you can go forward and, again, focus on that national recruiting, focus on a lot of these other guys and say, well, look at the base we already have. I mean, we already have a 4-star quarterback in this class. We've already got 3 really talented wide receivers. We've already got 2 defensive linemen. We've already got a linebacker that, is a local kid who we think could be developed into a special player. So, again, continuing to recruit local is going to be huge in multiple classes. I mean, in all the future classes down the road. We've seen that Brent Venables loves to do that. But I think it's really good in adding these local kids early in the process, because then it allows you to focus, nationally on the kids who are waiting longer to make their decisions, who maybe didn't grow up as OU fans. It's a little harder to work on those kids from Florida, from California, from wherever, than it is to work on a kid from Oklahoma City or Wagner, Oklahoma, who probably grew up around the program. It's a lot easier to get him in for visits, things like that.
Yeah. All right, you mentioned the 2 guys that committed last week. Let's go into them. Marcus James, kind of an outside linebacker, edge rusher from Carl Albert, started his career at Bishop McGuinness, but you were there for his commitment, and then he was like, "Oh, by the way, I'm not done," and he brought out his teammate and future teammate. It was quite the scene.
It was. Yeah, it was a really special moment. Obviously everyone gathered there for a big moment for Marcus James. It was really cool. His mom, his dad, his brother, and his sister were all there. So it was really, really cool to get to see him make that announcement right there. And then, kind of taking everyone by surprise and saying, when he grabbed the mic and he said, "Oh, and I got someone coming with me." When Trinae Washington walks up to the stage, it was a big shock to, I think, a lot of people in that room. I mean, we had some inclination that maybe eventually Trinae might be an OU guy, but the timing of it was really surprising to us. And so for OU to get both of those commitments on the same day, I know that's probably huge for Brent Venables and company. Again, locking down Carl Albert, that's a local pipeline they've been one of the best teams in Oklahoma in football, basketball, baseball, you name it, for the past decade, maybe even longer. Just as far as I can remember, the past decade, they've been one of the top producing teams in Oklahoma. So to continue to build that pipeline is going to be huge. I don't think Carl Albert's going to go away anytime soon. I think there's just going to be more and more prospects that come out of that high school. So for OU to kind of have them on lock, kind of have that pipeline there, that's going to be huge. Now, those players specifically, Marcus James chose OU over TCU, over Utah, over Texas A&M, over Arkansas. So this is 2 schools that are going to be in the Big 12, TCU and Utah, 2 future SEC opponents, A&M and Arkansas. I mean, winning, obviously we know what Utah's done on the defensive side of the ball, beating out 2 other SEC opponents, especially a school like A&M, who has been known for their recruiting prowess. That's really, really solid for OU. We talked about it last week with Marcus James, not afraid to hit. He loves contact, very physical. And he is 6'4", 215, 220. I would imagine that when he gets in a collegiate weight program with Jerry Schmidt, with some of those other guys, that's a guy whose frame can really, really fill out. I mean, you can already kind of see that he's got a good frame, good wide shoulders. And I think that once you get him into a college weight training program, I mean, he's just going to excel and grow in a good way, get a lot bigger very quickly. And I think that as an off-ball linebacker, like you said, kind of outside linebacker, that type of guy, I think that he's exactly what this coaching staff really likes. Now, Trinae Washington's really interesting because, again, it did take us by a little bit of surprise, the timing of it. Trinae's a guy that we've both seen in person. We've watched him play. Plays receiver. He plays kind of some corner, safety. Does a lot. And, you and I have talked what position looks best for him in college. I mean, this is a guy who right now he's a junior in high school playing cornerback at 6'3" and 200 pounds. I mean, you don't see many cornerbacks like that at the college or NFL level, let alone at the high school level. And so after he committed, I asked him, I said, well, what position are you planning on playing? And he said he's had a lot of conversation with Jeff Lebby. He's had a lot of conversations with Joe John Finley, that's a key right there. A lot of conversation with Joe John Finley saying that he'll probably be kind of a split out tight end, big wide receiver type of role. I don't want to compare them exactly because obviously they're very different players, but a similar way to what Mark Andrews does, as he is listed as a tight end, but I mean Mark Andrews doesn't really put his hand in the ground and block a lot. I can see Trinae Washington being more of a guy who maybe is listed as a tight end, but probably not putting his hand in the dirt a lot, probably splitting up out wide and being more of a big slot receiver, catching a lot of passes, stuff like that. He's a great athlete. Again, you've seen yourself. He plays 7-on-7 with Kevin Sperry for Team C4. So they obviously have that really good connection going already. And personally, I'm very, very high on Trinae Washington. I think that he's got the potential to be a really good player just because of the body and the athleticism. You don't see a lot of guys who have that combination. So I think he chose OU over A&M, over Iowa State. Some other schools, a little bit of a more light recruitment for Trinae Washington in the grand scheme of things, but I think that OU is going to be really, really glad to have him when he gets on campus. And just to kind of close out the Carl Albert conversation, we mentioned Sperry, we mentioned Xavier Robinson, we mentioned these two recent commits. Tristan Haynes, 4-star cornerback. He's the highest rated out of all 5 of those Carl Albert players. I mean, offers from Alabama, offers from Oklahoma, all over the country. Tristan Haynes has drawn a lot of interest. I know Alabama, Nick Saban really, really likes him. But I think that his teammates, especially the 2025 guys, are really going to work on getting Tristan Haynes, a 6'2" defensive back, cornerback, to Norman. I think that his teammates really want him in Norman. I think that Tristan himself would like to be in Norman. Every time I've seen him there, whether it was at the Brent Venables camp, the coaches were really paying attention to him, really taking him to the side to make sure to give him the time of day to offer up some coaching, whatever it was, just really taking him under their wing. It seemed like they took specific notice to him over a lot of other players. And so I think that he's a priority for OU. I think his teammates obviously are going to want him at OU. And I think that the Sooners are going to have a really good chance getting him on campus, especially now that they've got his teammates on board.
Yeah, I'll tell you this about Tristan. It doesn't surprise me that Nick Saban likes him, wants him, or anybody else, because when I watched him last spring at the 7-on-7 here in Broken Arrow, I just say it like this: he was toying with guys who are Division I prospects, guys who have a great offer list. He was shutting them down. I mean, he would let the quarterback throw in that direction, and he would just reach around and bat it down, or he would jump the route and pick it off, or almost pick it off. He was just toying with guys. So he's intellectually, football-wise, just in terms of instinct and what he knows, what route he looks like, and then his ability to respond.
Yeah.
You run a double move or you run a post corner, something like that, something where you're trying to deceive the defensive back. He's right there in your pocket because of his reactions are so instantaneous. He's a very, very special player. You can see why he's number one. All you got to do is watch him. You see why he's number one in the state. On Trinae, the page I'm looking at, Randall, it says he's 6'4", 210. So some updated height and weight information on him. He's bigger than I remember.
Yeah, I mean, again, for a guy to be able to move the way he does, especially as a junior in high school, I mean, he's 16, 17 years old. A guy at 6'4", 210 to be able to move the way he does, drop back in coverage, run routes, really impressive. I mean, he's a great athlete, really fluid for a guy that size. That's what impresses me, because a lot of times guys that big, especially even being that heavy too, it's not like he's 6'4", 180. Yvonne Carillon is 6'6", 190 pounds, right? He's not super skinny, but he is a little bit on the thinner side. I mean, for him to be not only 6'4", but as heavy as he is and move the way he does, that's really impressive for a high school prospect. And you mentioned Haynes, the speed, the arm length, that tracks perfectly with exactly what you were saying. Great athlete, really good body to play corner. Like I said, he's 6'2", plays receiver on offense. I think that he's a great prospect. I think the Sooners would love to have him.
Mm-hmm. We'll see how that one goes. He's a 25 as well, so we'll see. He's got a little time, obviously. Offensive line, we got some possibly good news this week for Oklahoma fans and some possibly bad news this week for Oklahoma fans.
Yeah, so we'll start with the good news first. Maybe people will listen to the podcast a little longer. Grant Brix, 4-star offensive lineman who feels like we've talked about every week for the past 3 months. Goes back and forth between Oklahoma and Nebraska. It feels like every week for the past 4 months. And no shade to the kid at all. I mean, I think that anyone can understand these are tough decisions, things like that. But from reporting, Grant Brix will be in Norman this weekend when OU takes on West Virginia. That's going to be huge for the Sooners because, again, as I just mentioned, it seems like he's been really close, teetering back and forth between making a decision between OU and Nebraska. Getting him on campus this weekend is going to be huge for the Sooners. I mean, if you can really show him a good time, not only behind the scenes, what the school has to offer, help continue to build those relationships between him and Bill Beatonbow, him and Jerry Schmidt, some of the other guys on the staff, but also go out onto the field, make a statement with the way that you play, go out and beat West Virginia handily, go out and show Grant Brix that, what the offensive line at Oklahoma is capable of, what a great offensive line looks like. If those guys are able to put their best foot forward, I think that would go a really long way in finally securing that commitment, because again, it seems like there's been multiple times where Brix has been so close to pulling the trigger, whether it was to Oklahoma or Nebraska. And it seems like this weekend is Oklahoma's, best chance to really stake their claim and put their foot in the ground and win that recruitment. Again, a good performance this weekend, a good atmosphere. It'll be a night game, so again, OU's got the opportunity to really showcase, some of the light shows they do. Maybe the fans will be in a really good mood, lively environment with it being a 6 p.m. kick. If all that plays well, then I think that Grant Brix after this weekend will be leaning even more heavily towards Oklahoma. Again, with him, it's really hard to tell if that could result in a commitment or if that's gonna make him go back to the drawing board and take even longer to decide it. It's really hard to tell. But again, I do think that this weekend Oklahoma's got probably the best chance it will have for the rest of the recruiting cycle to put themselves in position to win that recruitment with Brix. And that, OU really, really needs to win that recruitment. Not only would Brix be one of Bill Beatonbow's highest rated commitments ever. Caden Green last year was Bill Beatonbow's highest rated commitment ever. I think that Grant Brix would be right below that. So that would be a huge get for OU. Not only would he himself be a great get, but that'd be the 5th offensive lineman in this 2024 class, kind of rounding out that group. You really want to bring in 5 guys to get a lot of depth, build towards the future. You get Brix in there, and he's probably the best of those 5 that you've got committed at that point if you're OU. And so it's a huge weekend for the Sooners. I think they really need to go out and win that Grant Brix recruitment, because what we'll mention now, it seems like a guy who was maybe leaning towards Oklahoma recently, Eddie Pierre-Louis, has maybe kind of backed off of his interest in Oklahoma from some things that we've heard, some reporting. He came to Norman a few weeks ago to watch. Eddie Pierre-Louis is a kid from Tampa Catholic, so just keep in mind Tampa Catholic, right next to UCF Orlando, probably only half an hour away from his high school. And someone who seemingly grew up a fan of, or I don't want to say grew up, but has recently become a fan of UCF, leaning towards UCF. Then there is some belief that he was leaning towards Oklahoma. Even took a visit to Norman when UCF came to town to watch the Knights and the Sooners play. And since then, it seems like OU's kind of lost some momentum. And I don't want to say I know exactly why that is, but if you look at a kid from Tampa came to see his hometown team play OU in Norman, OU has a real letdown game while they're still able to manage to win. It is a real letdown game. They only win by 2 points coming off of a bye, coming off a huge win against Texas. And in the last 2 weeks, they've not looked very good, and they've lost both times. And I think that might just be a cut and dry. If you look at it, a kid from miles and miles away coming across the country to see a performance that wasn't OU's best of the season, followed by 2 losses. A kid who was interested in UCF beforehand, it's easy to connect the dots to see how maybe some of that interest has faded in the past 3-4 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not that that's the end all be all for a player of the talent of Eddie Pierre Louis. He's
Right.
thinking apparently about going to Oregon as well. Oregon's very high on his list, so distance might not be such a big thing for him. But when you see the performances on the field, he might be. You delve as a young person, you delve into, okay, let's see what Oklahoma's about, and you take in the visit, like you said, and they didn't play very well. And okay, let's see how they bounce back. They go on the road and they lose to Kansas, and you're like, okay, that's probably just an aberration. Let's see what they do against Oklahoma State. And now all of a sudden, 3 games into this thing, you've seen 3 straight performances where they're not very good. Maybe there's something to that. I think you're on the right track there. You got any offers coming up that you know of, or have they made any recent offers? I should say, maybe is a better way of phrasing it. That
Yeah.
to some interesting prospects.
Yeah, so if you're in the state of Oklahoma, if you're a fan of local recruiting, Norman North 2026, that's a sophomore in high school. 2026 wide receiver Mason James got his first Division I offer from the Sooners last week. So not very often that OU is the first to offer someone, but Mason James is a kid who they've seen in person. He was at the Brent Venables camp this summer. Obviously playing for Norman North, he's right down the road from OU, and I mean he's had a great season for the Timberwolves. I mean, anytime that I'm seeing the game updates of Norman North, it feels like it's Mason James scoring a touchdown. If you watched him at the Brent Venables camp this summer, which go back and dig through the AllSooners archives, we do have some highlight video of him from the Brent Venables camp on our website. Really fast. I mean, just is able to just burn by defensive backs. He knows really well how to play with pace. So some stutter routes, stop and go, stuff like that. He's really, really dangerous on routes like that. And then when you watch him put the pads on, just a guy who, despite being 5'10", 160 pounds, is really physical with the ball in his hands. He's not afraid to lower his shoulder when he needs to. When he's near the goal line, he knows he's not going to do the Gavin Freeman jump from the 5-yard line. He's going to put his shoulder down and try to burrow in to the end zone. And no shade to Gavin Freeman, just wanted to get a joke there. But anyway, good prospect. I think that will probably really, really heat up on the recruiting trail now that OU's offered him. Again, sophomore, really, really fast. I think that his recruitment will continue to heat up. And I think that OU being the first school to offer him, especially a kid from Norman, is going to go a long way. I think that, again, he's got a long time to decide, but I think that OU's in a really good spot there. Again, they've got one commitment in the 2026 class, who's a very impressive running back, Jonathan Hatton. And so it would not be, I guess, adding another talented skill position player in that 2026 class is definitely a possibility. Now in the 2025 class, Dawson Merritt, who's from Overland Park, Kansas, got an offer last week too. For those who are listening that are not familiar with Overland Park, Kansas, which was me until we went there about 2 weeks ago, it's only about 4 hours from Norman. Really close to the border of Oklahoma and Kansas, so not a long ways at all. Again, Kansas, kind of Brent Venables' stomping grounds.
It's a Kansas City suburb, basically.
Yeah. That's right. It's a suburb of Kansas City, so not very far from Oklahoma. Really easy drive, obviously, just down to Norman from there. And Brent Venables' stomping grounds, being from Kansas, he obviously knows what he's looking at with those guys from Kansas. I mean, Jaron Kanak is a guy that came out of Hayes, Kansas. If you want to look across college football, Dylan Edwards, the Colorado running back, a guy from Derby, Kansas. There's a few other guys. Again, Derby, Kansas this year has, and next year has Desan Brame, who's a 2025 OU offer at tight end. So maybe not in-state recruiting, but just north of the state, Kansas, still pretty local. Brent Venables doing a nice job of keeping the top talent, not only in the state, but in the region. Kind of in Oklahoma, getting a lot of those best players from Kansas, from Missouri, from Oklahoma, from Texas. I mean, and that's going to pay off. Those kids want to stay close to home, I would imagine, or it's at least convenient to stay close to home for them. Maybe not a necessity, but it is convenient. So getting out, making those offers, that's something that we didn't see from the previous staff very often. Not a lot of kids in Kansas, not a lot of kids in Oklahoma getting offers every year like we're seeing now, which for the AllSooners crew, it's great. It gives us plenty of opportunity to go see these guys in person. But I think that for OU, it'll be helpful too. You want to really dominate recruiting in the region you're in. I think Brent Venables has done what he needs to do to get that started and continue that. Obviously, they're dominating recruiting in the Sooner State now. moving to Kansas, Missouri. That's probably next step for those guys.
No change in the team recruiting rankings this week. OU is number 6 according to Rivals in the team recruiting rankings, number 7 according to 24/7 Sports, and number 9 according to On3. Those are the same exact as what they were last week. So maybe Shield Knight changes some of that if he were to commit to Oklahoma tomorrow. We'll see. We don't know exactly what time. I saw 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but fact of the matter is I think he's doing it during his game, or maybe slightly before his game. So Randall will be there to bring it all to you.
I think it'll be similar to a Nigel Smith situation where it's kind of like right before the game and then boom, game time.
Hopefully the Wi-Fi is working well.
Yeah, hopefully better than it was in Melissa.
Good stuff, Randall. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Hoove.
Yep, thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week. No, we'll be back post-game. Why do I say that? We'll be back post-game with the AllSooners post-game podcast Saturday night after the West Virginia game, certified fresh from the press box. You can find that show plus next week's and all of our shows on wherever you get your podcasts. That's Apple, that's Google, that's Spotify, that's Podbean, that's iHeart. If you have an Amazon-enabled device, just say, Alexa, play the AllSooners podcast. It's also posted on our website, AllSooners.com. Just click on the player there on that page and listen on your phone, your tablet, or your computer. And, of course, all my shows are on my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. For Ryan Chapman and Randall Sweet, I am John Hoover. See you guys.